to open the main card. We got Gil Burns versus Neil Magny. But maybe this would be higher considering Gilbert Burns gave us, like, basically, in my opinion, fight of the year last year. Gilbert Burns against Hamzat, in case you didn't know. But the lines are a bit extreme for this one, too, in my opinion. Minus 410 for Gilbert Burns. Yeah, he's not a high-value bet. But I do think he has the edge in most areas. I think he's got the power. I think he's got, he's not like the more accurate striker, but when he lands hard. You just went over Neil Magny's record, his past 5 fights. Sure, he has, a submission victory in there, but Gilbert Burns is naturally just a way better Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter outside of the fact that he's from Brazil. When he fought Kamaru Usman for the belt, during the pandemic, Kamaru was scared to go to the ground with Gilbert Burns, absolutely refused, wanted him to come back to his feet. So, I think it's almost obvious in this one. This is Gilbert Burns' fight. And maybe a bit of a reward too, right? Like it'll still be entertaining unless Gilbert does what he did against Wonder Boy when he just, laid on top of him. All right, yeah, highlight the size difference. It is a major size difference.
And I just want to point out that Khamzat Chimaev is 6'1" with a 76-inch reach. So an extra 2 inches of height and an extra 4 inches of reach here for Neil Magny. But Neil Magny is doesn't have the bulk that Khamzat Chimaev has.
He doesn't have half the skills that Khamzat has either.
That's very true. But he does have a long arms and limbs to use that teep kick, to use that jab that he does use effectively to keep Gil Burns at range. I don't think we're going to see Gil Burns go in there and take him down because, listen, Neil Magny does have some decent jiu-jitsu, and we saw that against, an exhausted Dan Rodriguez, able to go in there and get that Darce choke that I think Dan ended up tapping like very close to the end of the round. So, Daniel Rodriguez, obviously not the best grappler, and Neil Magny was able to finish him with those long arms. I don't see Neil Magny submitting Gilbert Burns. Of course not. And I really actually don't think Gilbert Burns is going to submit Neil Magny. That's not his style. He may try to take him down and land a bunch of punches in the clinch against the fence, same way he did to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I think that's probably how this is going to go. I think fight goes the distance is your best bet. I think Gil Burns probably is going to win, but it's going to be difficult for him to get in there. He lands a lot of the close shots. He likes to land his right hand. He likes to land some hooks. He likes to get in close. And I think he's going to have a harder time against Neil Magny getting in close than he had against Khamzat Chimaev, who's going to throw wildly. And if you could evade the first one, you can get in there with an uppercut. So I think it's going to be an interesting fight. I do want to side with Gil Burns and definitely by decision. But hey, listen.
I think Khamzat uses his range a lot better. At least, sure, he's like wrestled in the majority of his fights. But I think that he showed in that Gilbert Burns fight, I think he uses his range better than Neil Magny because he throws from distance, and then he closes the distance very fast and gets in where he's strong. And Gilbert Burns, if he can get on the outside and close the distance, then, this is very easily his fight, I think. I think he's just maybe they're trying to capitalize on the hype with Gilbert Burns, too, in the past couple of fights, making him minus 410. But I think if you roll with Gilbert Burns by decision, you're in a very safe spot. And with the length that Neil Magny has, if Gilbert Burns gets into his guard or just gets on top of him in general, Neil Magny's not going to be able to, put his legs under Gil Burns' hips and kick and push himself out of there. So the second that Gilbert Burns gets top control in this fight, it's his fight. Like it's over, at least for that round. So I just don't really see like a path to victory for Neil Magny the way that I do with Gilbert Burns. I see Gilbert Burns being able to close the distance, land heavy shots. Yeah, sure, he's gonna have to swing up at a guy that's 6'3", but
I sense a lot of body work happening here, especially Neil Magny is a guy who will use that range occasionally, but also push you up against the fence and like to win in that clinch style position. I saw Neil Magny doing kind of to Daniel Rodriguez what we saw Gil Burns do to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So I think they have a very similar style in that regard. Gil Burns being the stockier guy, I don't know if he's necessarily going to be the stronger guy, but I think he's going to have more finesse when it comes to jiu-jitsu and maybe in the clinch positions. I don't think he's going to get taken advantage of the way that Dan Rodriguez got taken advantage of
Oh,
by
yeah.
Neil Magny in the clinch. So I think, everything, as close as it may be and how much the scales may tip because of the reach and the size advantage here, I think the jiu-jitsu and the grappling advantage for Gil Burns kind of tips him even. I would say this is a very safe fight to bet going the distance. You like Gil Burns in it, like you said. But listen, I got to tell you, I would not sleep on Neil Magny. I don't think he's going to win the fight, but I think he makes this a very entertaining one.
Yeah, it'll definitely be entertaining. They know Gilbert Burns. Like he's a guy that, if they give him someone that, can be entertaining against, he's going to make it entertaining, I guess. But regardless, I don't see a world in which Neil Magny beats Gilbert Burns. He's not going to be able to catch him, I don't think. Maybe he uses that length and he does slip something on Gilbert Burns. That's the only way that I see him winning this one. Outside of that, Gilbert Burns is just so much better in so many different areas, I think.
Right.
And like to the point of, Gilbert Burns not being taken advantage of the way that Daniel Rodriguez is. Daniel Rodriguez is a great boxer. There's no denying that, but he has no ground game whatsoever. So Gilbert Burns is super intelligent on the ground. I mean, Hamzat didn't want to go to the ground with Gilbert Burns. He's so intelligent on the ground. I think Gilbert Burns is going to take Neil Magny down in the beginning of each round and just stay on top of him and land a lot of shots. I can't see any other, I don't know if this fight's really going to spend that much time on the feet, but it's Gilbert Burns. Maybe he'll want to make it entertaining. All right.
It's true. He does have a lot of entertaining fights.